Okay, let's unpack something truly remarkable and, frankly, concerning. Imagine this. A secret program running for a decade right at the heart of America's defense systems. And it involves foreign engineers, minimal oversight. I mean, it sounds like something out of a spy thriller, right? But as we've seen in the sources you provided, this is very much real. So today we're diving deep into a bombshell investigation that just broke. It reveals how a major tech giant's practices could be putting the U.S. Defense Department at significant national security risk. You sent us some really compelling stuff, the ProPublica investigation that, well, blew the lid off this, expert analyses, government reports, all digging into cloud security and its geopolitical side.
That's right. And our mission today really is to pull out the most important insights from all this material. We need to look at the specific arrangement that set off these alarms. Why did experts see it as such a serious national security concern? And then connected to the bigger picture, cloud computing, AI, safeguarding sensitive data.
Yeah.
It's all linked.
Yeah.
It really poses a fundamental question, doesn't it? How do you balance technological progress and cost-cutting with the absolute need for national security?
It's a huge challenge, and by the end of this deep dive, hopefully you'll have a much clearer picture of this hidden infrastructure, the stuff supporting our digital world, and what it means for our security. Let's get started. So the ProPublica piece dropped July 15th, 2025. And the core revelation was, well, it's pretty stunning for a lot of people. For nearly 10 years, a Microsoft program used engineers based in China to help maintain highly sensitive U.S. Defense Department cloud systems. Minimal U.S. supervision. That was the kicker.
Yeah, the mechanics of this digital escort program, it was quite specific. It was designed, essentially, to get around federal rules.
Yeah.
Rules that say only U.S. citizens with security clearances can access sensitive defense data. So Microsoft hired U.S. citizens as these escorts.
Right.
Their job, to type in commands written by foreign engineers, yes, including engineers in China, directly into government systems. And this setup, believe it or not, was actually key for Microsoft to even get these big federal cloud contracts.
Okay, so on paper, maybe it sounds like they're ticking the box for security clearance, but where was the real vulnerability? Was it baked into the design or more how it played out?
It seems like it was mostly in the execution, the escorts themselves.
Hmm.
Well, they often just didn't have the technical chops, They couldn't really effectively monitor the Chinese engineers, who were often much more skilled technically. ProPublica quoted one anonymous escort, and it really sums it up. We're trusting that what they're doing isn't malicious, but we really can't tell. And Matthew Erickson, a former Microsoft engineer who worked on the program, he backed this up. He said the escorts would have no idea if a script was malicious. It basically created a huge blind spot.
And the data they were dealing with, what kind of level are we talking about?
Oh, the stakes are incredibly high. This system handled high-impact level government information, specifically Defense Department data classified as impact level 4 and 5. Now, this isn't just like paperwork. This data directly supports military operations.
Military operations.
Exactly. According to the Pentagon's own guidelines, compromising this level of data could have severe or catastrophic adverse effects on operations, assets, even individuals.
It's sobering just thinking about the potential risk there, and the reactions from top officials, Harry Coker, John Sherman. They weren't just surprised, were they?
No, not at all. It was deep concern. Harry Coker, former senior exec at CIA and NSA, he called it an avenue for extremely valuable access for foreign operatives. He actually said it was a far greater national security risk than, say, TikTok, which gets a lot more headlines.
That's a strong statement.
Very. And John Sherman, the former DoD CIO, he expressed surprise and concern, called for a thorough review. Then you have Michael Sabolic from the Hudson Institute, using that Stark analogy, asking the fox to guard the henhouse and arming the chickens with sticks. Really paints a picture.
And underlying all this is the geopolitical reality, particularly with China, right?
Absolutely. That's a critical piece. Chinese law gives the government really sweeping powers. They can compel companies, individuals, anyone to cooperate with state intelligence gathering. So experts point out it's inherently difficult, maybe impossible, for Chinese citizens or even companies operating there to truly resist direct requests from security forces. This raises huge concerns about potential state-sponsored spying, regardless of what a company's internal policies might be.
So Microsoft's initial defense was that their people operated consistent with U.S. government requirements, and global workers had no direct access. How long did that hold up?
Not long at all. It became unsustainable very fast. After the ProPublica story broke, the scrutiny was intense. You had officials like Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth stating very publicly, very forcefully on July 18th that foreign engineers should never be allowed to maintain or access DoD systems, period.
That's pretty definitive.
Extremely. And within hours, literally hours, Microsoft's chief communications officer, Frank Shaw, announced changes. He assured everyone that no China-based engineering teams are providing technical assistance for DoD, government cloud, and related services anymore. The speed of that U-turn really tells you how serious the situation was perceived.
But this specific incident, as shocking as it is, it really feels like it shines a spotlight on something bigger, doesn't it? This whole issue of the U.S. DoD relying so heavily on just one software vendor, Microsoft.
Exactly. It brings up what experts call the monoculture risk. People like former DoD CIO John Zangardi, former White House official Andrew Grotto, they've highlighted this. When you rely primarily on one provider, you create this massive single point of failure. It's not just about technical failure either. It's about how, maybe unintentionally, things like cost-cutting and convenience can lead you to overlook strategic diversification. You build in systemic risks without even realizing it.
And there are economic consequences too, right?
Oh, definitely. Look at the decision to replace the DoD's Multi-Vendor Endpoint Security Solutions Program, the ESS program. They replaced it with Microsoft Defender tools. That cost $543 million over 2 years. And people like John Weiler from the IT Acquisition Advisory Council raised concerns. He basically said this move killed market competition for critical security tools, locking the DoD into one vendor. Less innovation, potentially higher long-term costs.
Which connects to another criticism. You hear this idea of the security upsell.
Right. He seizes Eric Goldstein, John Pescatore at the Sandus Institute.
Yeah.
They've used this analogy. It's like a water company selling you contaminated water and then charging you extra for the filter to make it safe. The argument is that robust security shouldn't be an expensive add-on. It should be baked into the core product, especially for critical government systems.
And this isn't the first time Microsoft's cloud security has been under the microscope, is it?
No, definitely not. Remember the Cyber Safety Review Board, the CSRB? They put out a report in September 2024. This was after that big Chinese hack in 2023, Storm 0558, where hackers got into U.S. officials' emails through Microsoft's cloud. The CSRB report called for a major Microsoft cloud security overhaul. They pointed to inadequate identity security controls and even outdated cryptographic practices. To its credit, Microsoft did launch its Secure Future initiative in response, committing to address the CSRB's findings. So steps are being taken.
Okay, so shifting gears slightly, part of the problem here seems to be just how incredibly complex cloud computing itself is.
It absolutely is. You're talking about this vast, intricate web of technologies, services, data centers, global actors. It makes it really, really hard for regulators to fully grasp it all and design effective, comprehensive rules. What we've ended up with is often described as a fragmented patchwork of policies, laws, and standards across different regions and countries.
Which brings us to cloud data sovereignty. What does that mean for, the average person or company using the cloud?
Basically, it's the idea that data stored in a particular country is subject to the laws of that country. So if your data or a company's data is stored in Europe, it falls under the EU's GDPR. If it's in China, China's PIPL applies. If it's in California, you've got CCPAC PRA. This creates these conflicting legal requirements across borders. It's a massive headache for global companies trying to stay compliant, and it affects where your data can legally reside and who can access it.
And this leads governments to push for digital sovereignty.
Exactly. Countries increasingly want to maintain control, or autonomy, over digital technologies and the data flowing across their borders. This often translates into data localization laws demanding data be stored within the country and sometimes building their own sovereign clouds. But the downside is this can make that regulatory fragmentation even worse, and it creates tension with the global economy's need for data to flow relatively freely.
And layered on top of all this is the fact that just a few big companies dominate the cloud market.
Yeah, that's a huge factor. The top 3 cloud providers, Amazon AWS, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud, they control something like 65% of the global market. This concentration creates what some call a knowledge imbalance. These companies understand the intricacies far better than most regulators. It leads to a lack of transparency, potentially, and gives these few giants enormous influence over how cloud computing, and by extension, much of our digital infrastructure, evolves.
Let's talk about AI for a moment. Cloud computing is pretty fundamental to the AI boom we're seeing, isn't it?
Oh, completely essential. You can't really have the current AI revolution without the cloud. It provides the absolutely massive, scalable storage needed for training data. And critically, The computational power, especially those specialized chips like GPUs, graphics processing units, they're vital for the parallel processing AI demands. The cloud even, in a way, democratizes AI. It gives smaller companies, researchers, even individuals access to supercomputing power they could never afford on their own.
But that power cuts both ways, right? The dual use problem.
Absolutely. Democratizing access is great for innovation, but it also makes powerful AI capabilities more accessible to, well, malicious actors. Think about using AI for sophisticated disinformation campaigns or developing new cyber attack methods. The barrier to entry gets lower.
And how does this all challenge older ideas about things like arms control?
Fundamentally, traditional arms control is often built around controlling physical things, centrifuges, missiles, nuclear material, things you can inspect, track, located in specific territories. Cloud computing throws a wrench in that. It allows remote access to immense computational power. Someone could potentially develop, say, advanced military AI capabilities using cloud resources located anywhere in the world, potentially bypassing traditional export controls focused on physical hardware. It multiplies the proliferation risk in the digital realm.
So what's being done? Are there new approaches emerging?
There are ideas being floated, yeah. The U.S. Department of Commerce, specifically the Bureau of Industry and Security, BIS, they're working on Know Your Customer rules for infrastructure as a service providers.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is companies to identify and report information about foreign customers who might be using their services to train large AI models, especially potentially dangerous ones.
Interesting. Like banks have know your customer rules.
Sort of, yeah. Applying that concept to computing power. There's also talk about maybe creating licensing regimes.
Mm-hmm.
So providers or even users might need a license to access or offer very large amounts of computing power, allowing for some vetting and monitoring for potentially military AI development.
Huh.
It's a novel approach, trying to adapt control mechanisms to this new reality.
And all this blurs the lines between civilian and military infrastructure too, doesn't it?
Massively. So much critical infrastructure, including potentially military systems, runs on the same shared cloud platforms as civilian services. This raises really difficult questions for international humanitarian law. What constitutes a legitimate target in conflict if military and civilian data or processing are intertwined on the same cloud servers? It's a complex and worrying issue.
Okay, so reflecting on this deep dive, it feels like the Microsoft digital escort story wasn't just some isolated glitch.
Not at all.
It really exposed these deeper systemic vulnerabilities in how critical government data is handled in the cloud era. It highlights, I think, an urgent need for much stronger oversight, maybe more diversity in IT vendors for critical systems, and a real reevaluation of that balance between, corporate profit and genuine national security needs.
Precisely. And if you connect the dots to the bigger picture, the fact that cloud computing is everywhere, its critical role in AI, the global jostling for digital sovereignty, it all points towards needing a much more cohesive global approach. You need governments, industry, civil society, all involved in governance. It's about treating the cloud itself as critical global infrastructure and maybe developing like digital twins of all arms control ideas, concepts adapted for the non-physical interconnected world we live in now.
The stakes really couldn't be higher for national security, for the stability of our whole digital future. So maybe a final thought for you, our listener, to chew on. Given how deeply cloud computing affects everything, military infrastructure, daily life, what role do individuals, maybe smaller organizations, have? Can we or should we push for more transparency and better security from that handful of tech giants who, let's face it, literally hold the keys to our digital world?